We're very, very excited to bring to you some really great information, some really great affirmation for some of us, and just some new information for others. Sonali, thank you so much for being here. We're very excited when you came highly recommended, and once we read your work and learned more about your work, we just knew that we had to do whatever it took to get you to talk to us here in our great state of Texas. So thank you so much for being here. And I am excited again about all of us coming together collectively, y'all, to kind of push past the status quo. We want to push past the comfort level and really have an open heart and an open mind as we listen to the words and the concepts that Sonali is going to bring to us today. We're all doing this work. We are all doing these things. And we just love the way that she talks about this. So I wanted to share a little bit of information about Sonali and the keynote before we get started. But Sonali is a survivor, a Southern immigrant Muslim queer feminist, communication coach, a holistic healer, and community organizer who believes in the transformative power of trauma and resilience-informed relationships for influencing social change for collective liberation. Boy, that's just a powerful that's a powerful thing. She is the creator of Relational Justice, a relational framework with a set of values, principles, and conscious communication practices designed to decolonize, transform, and heal both personal and professional relationships. We have the great fortune of having them with us today to share more about relational justice, which is the synthesis of 18 years of their work applying relational neuroscience, transformative justice, and healing justice frameworks. For nearly 2 decades, they have organized with Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and queer, trans, lesbian, gay, bi, intersex, gender, nonconforming liberation movements in the South at the intersections of racial, gender, environmental justice, healing justice, and transformative justice. Sonali has asked me to include a content warning for all of you that the keynote will include references to white supremacy, colonization, capitalization, ableism, sizeism, trauma, privilege, marginalization, and Islamophobia, as any good keynote should. So thank you, Sonali, so much. And I'm honored to have you here and would like to pass this over to you.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you. Deep gratitude to Texas Association Against Sexual Assault, TASA, for inviting me to join you here today for this keynote address. And also thanks to everyone who worked so hard and for months and months to put this conference together. It's not easy to bring together and like a few hundred folks, and especially with so much going on in our world, so much going on in our communities, so much going on in the South. And it's a lot. We're battling, climate change. We're battling all kinds of stuff. And to gather here today, and I'm seeing almost exactly 200 folks. So welcome you all. Welcome y'all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for everybody who worked so hard behind the scenes to put this conference together. All the tech folks, all the organizers, Denise, Cecilia, Laura, who I've been in communication with for weeks and answering all my questions that I send out randomly, and everybody else who I haven't yet to meet. Just thank you for holding this conversation, for holding this convening on such a topic. So with that, I think I'm going to share my screen. Give me a moment. Okay, here we go. And present. Let me exit my full screen. Oh, wait, hold on. Yeah, go back. Is it on presentation? Let me see. I'm trying. Okay, here we go.
Looks good. Mm-hmm.
No, I just lost my presentation. Oops. Okay. Resume share. Folks are still coming in, so it's okay. You haven't missed much.
Yes. No, take your time, Sonali. I see something on the screen that looks like a presentation. It says "I invite you" at the top, and
Okay,
it looks like a
you
presentation.
can see it, but it disappeared for me.
Oh, okay, okay,
Let me, okay, let me just go to stop share
okay.
and read. I think what I may do is just, it just
Do you want
disappeared.
me to share it, Sonali, and then you can tell me when to turn the slides?
Oh gosh, no, here we go. Here we go. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is, I just need it to be shared in a different format, but
I can make some more announcements while you
go for it. Go
figure
for
it
it.
out. Go
Yeah.
ahead, take your time.
Go for it.
I just want to remind folks that while we won't have the opportunity to have you unmuted and see each other or interact with each other, I would definitely encourage you to type in the chat as Sonali is talking and giving us some words of wisdom. I would deeply encourage you to go ahead and write in the chat box, write in the Q&A if you have a question or if you'd like something more deeply explained. That'll be a good way for us to interact without being able to see each other. Any insights that you have as she's sharing or she's going along, or again, something you need a little cleared or explained a little bit more, please feel free to ask those questions. You can do that either in the chat box, or you can, if you have a specific question, you can also do that in the Q&A box. And we'll be answering, please answer in your preferred language or ask questions in your preferred language, English or Spanish. We'll have bilingual staff, myself included, taking a look at that. So please feel free to do it in whatever language feels more comfortable for you. The exception being English or Spanish or Spanglish, as we're at that capacity right now. But we're so excited you're here again, and please interact as you feel free.
Thank you so much, Denise, for picking that up and announcing, in making those invitations. You did it for me, so that's great. I wanted to know, is this format okay for the PowerPoint? Is this okay with you all? And you can, if in your side of the screen, you can make it bigger if you need to. But this is the format I prefer presenting in. So welcome everyone. So before I get started, I always like to start off by saying, may the divine guide me in this delivery to you today, and may you forgive me and kindly engage me for anything that I may misspeak or offend. I speak to you from settler occupation land of Cherokee and Muskogee people indigenous to current day Atlanta, Georgia. I recognize that the capitalist wealth of this country was built on the genocidal land theft of indigenous people who have lived on this land for many generations and have survived colonization, displacement, and various forms of violence, including sexual assault. Recognizing that even today, indigenous women are 3.5 times more likely to be sexually assaulted than any other group. So I thank you all for doing the work that you do to change this. I pray to the divine that indigenous ancestors be present here with us today and throughout this whole conference as we work to end sexual violence and uproot the systems and conditions that lead to the violence in the first place. My understanding is that y'all are joining this conference from all over Texas and maybe surrounding cities, states, maybe as well. So I welcome you. Welcome social workers, counselors, therapists, interns, program directors and managers, legal providers, attorneys, and everybody else that I haven't named. And advocates, right, who are working to center the needs of survivors. I thank you all for being here. I thank your ancestors, your guides, your team members, and your loved ones that are supporting you here to be here today, and that are supporting you to engage in this conference, this connecting, sharing, building, convening around a topic and reality that is enormously challenging, heartbreaking, outrageous, infuriating, numbing, unbearable, and much, much more, to say the least. I'm grateful for all that inspires you, that motivates you, that activates you, and sustains you to do this work day after day. May this gathering uplift your spirit and fill your heart and direct your soul's mission so much that you feel a greater sense of clarity, support, and drive by your side as you advocate for survivors, as you prevent future sexual assaults, and as you uproot and challenge the systems and forces that contribute to sexual assault in your mission to build a safer and a better world. Now, my heart is softened to see many of you who choose to do this work because you know the world needs you, needs your experiences, your wisdom. My heart is also humbled to see you all do this work because you know that you are called to do this work. You show up because it is your calling, your mission, your purpose. You show up because you know you must show up. You showing up because you are showing up because you know the scary and outrageous reality. As Tarana Bark, the founder of Me Too movement, reminds us that 60% of Black girls will experience sexual violence before the age of 18. She also reminds us that people with disabilities are 7 times more likely to be sexually violated and abused than able-bodied people. And the Center for Constitutional Rights reminds us that Black trans women are assaulted at disproportionate rates because of the intersection of racism, transphobia, sexism, biphobia, homophobia. And 84% of transgender people will be sexually assaulted at some point in their life. Now, the next few stats I want to share with you may or may not be controversial to some of you. Nonetheless, it is important to direct awareness towards an often vilified and forgotten population because sexual assault happens here too. 60% of all sexual violence against inmates is perpetuated by jail or prison staff. And in jail or prison, like I said, 60%, right? 59% of transgender inmates are sexually assaulted. Now, advocates, you got your work cut out. It's not easy, I know. I imagine there are days this work feels heavy and you may feel weary to your bones. And for a lot of you, chronic burnout and trauma is real. Mix it up with generational trauma, systemic oppression, including white supremacy, the pandemic, and then the volatility of climate change that we are all living and breathing in every day. It is simply overwhelming. Our collective nervous system is being challenged on multiple fronts. Yet, here you are, showing up. You pour your heart and soul into this deeply necessary, meaningful, needed work to prevent sexual violence from happening in your communities and build a safer future for all of us. Advocates, this you are in this field, absolutely. However, you are more than an advocate. See, I see you all as builders and healers, great warriors with a particular vision to impact systemic change. I see you as liberators, liberating us from the treacherous reality of one of the most intimate forms of violence on this planet. Your passion and presence makes this world a bit more bearable, a bit less isolating, and a lot more resilient. I hope that you always remember that the moment you start your day in your mission to transform the rape culture, you are contributing to a new collective reality for all of us. And I thank you for showing up to move this work forward, as hard as it is. Thank you for showing up feels really important to me because how you show up, it's huge. How you show up with folks in your personal and professional community matters. Especially those of you who you are in communication with on a regular basis. For example, how you speak to your colleague in that meeting matters. How you navigate conversations with that colleague who may or may not be a survivor, who may or may not be dealing with secondary trauma, who may or may not be having a challenging day because they're carrying the impact of generational trauma and the impact of being discriminated against for not being white enough, straight enough, able-bodied enough, cisgendered enough, of size enough, documented, or even economically resourced enough. So yes, how you show up with them, how you speak, by how you listen, you are influencing the sacred space that is shared between you and them. Because how you speak and how you listen has the power to heal or harm in real time. When you are in a position of privilege or power or leadership of some sort, in a relational or conversational context, then you are specially positioned to bring even a greater level of healing and liberation to one another. So, how you speak and how you listen has the power to heal or harm. So welcome to relational justice. Relational justice is about relating, relational holding, relational healing, and relational liberation. So welcome to relational justice. The relational justice framework recognizes the inherent power dynamics that are always at play in all relationships, and thus offers skillful, trauma-informed communication practices to help decolonize each other and offer emotional healing from the impact of trauma in real time. and level the playing field in the service of creating relational and collective liberation. Relational justice is also a practice, a dialogical embodiment, the art of embodying just relationships. So relational justice framework it's emerging. It has multiple dimensions, right? One dimension is that it requires us to get very clear about our identities of marginalization and privilege in real time, recognizing that even our identities of marginalization and privilege can change and shift over time. It's not static at any given time. Another dimension is that it requires us to support relational decolonization. Another dimension is that it requires us to accept conflict as growth waiting to happen. And the final dimension so far is that it really invites us to practice relational accountability. Now, in order to embody this framework, relational justice offers a set of dialogical practices, a set of communication skills, that when these skills are practiced, it has a way of settling the nervous system and creating psychological safety and enhancing our ability to deeply connect with one another so that trust, healing, and transformation can take place. And courage and humility is inherently built into this dialogical practice. Isn't that amazing? We'll talk more about, we'll dive more into the actual dimensions, the pieces of the dimensions, and also the practices a little bit later. But first, before I dive into that and in unpacking the framework, I would like to share why I do this work today with you. When I was 7 years old, content note, I just wanted to say that there is a topic of child sexual abuse coming up. Okay. So when I was 7 years old in Bangladesh, I was sexually violated by a middle-aged cis male tutor, a teacher, who was hired by my parents to teach me Arabic in the weekends so that I may go on to read the Quran one day on my own. Since I was a small child, I was expected to sit right next to him. And I was violated over the course of what felt like several months. On occasions, my older brother and sister would join in the lessons. They were about 11 and 12 at the time, but they sat across the table from me. I was violated even in the presence of my older siblings. There were times when I wished that one of my siblings would discover what was happening to me under the table, but they never did. Now, I was raised in a household that taught me to always obey my elders, do not question authority, and never talk back to adults. These conditions perpetuated the abuse that I suffered. The tutor was successful in grooming me to stay quiet and silent. And so I was mortified. I was mortified that what would happen to me if I ever told anyone about what was going on. So I remained silent. Colonizing tactics of silencing survivors perpetuates the abuse and trauma. But the abuse stopped by happenstance because my parents decided to start a new life and immigrate to the US in 1989. I was relieved that I would never have to see that tutor again. I would go on to live in silence, though, with what had happened to me for 15 years. Now fast forward to college. In college, I found myself leading the feminist student organization and producing the Vagina Monologues for our annual campus project. Little did I know that my work in Vagina Monologues would attract the attention of a community-based South Asian survivor-led initiative that was called Breaking the Silence Project, housed by Raksha, a South Asian women's organization in Atlanta. I was invited respectfully to join this project, and so I consented to checking it out. I ended up feeling the safety and integrity of the women in this group, and I began breaking my own silence. And that was 2003. It was in my work with Breaking the Silence Project that I would first learn that 1 out of 3 girls and 1 out of 6 boys are sexually violated in their lifetime. I did not have much, we did not have much of a gender analysis back then. And so we don't really have numbers for the gender non-binary, transgender, and gender non-conforming children. But at Breaking the Silence Project, I led the community organizing efforts to bring the transformative justice model in Atlanta to figure out how to create community-led strategies to respond to child sexual abuse, incest, violence against children. We began holding rigorous community mapping sessions and trainings to organize as many Atlanta-based social justice organizers and organizations and faith-based leaders and government agencies and leaders to take on the issue of child sexual abuse as part of how they do their day-to-day work. More importantly, we also wanted to see and assess who is able to join in the efforts to create alternative and transformative ways to hold community-based accountability processes without relying on the criminal legal system. Because we knew that many survivors of color and their communities are doubly harmed by the criminal legal system, especially after reporting an incident. We were very clear that the criminal legal system was not set up to provide protection, safety, and justice to our people, especially not in the height of post 9/11 hysteria, Islamophobia, US imperialism, where South Asian communities and other people of color communities were being targeted left and right every day. So my work with Breaking the Silence Project actually led to the co-founding of another group and collective called the Atlanta Transformative Justice Collective, where I would begin organizing with 3 revolutionary movement builders and shakers: Kara Page, a Black queer feminist, cultural and memory worker; Mia Mingus, a queer physically disabled Korean and a disability justice activist; and Stephanie Guyer, the co-director of Project South, whose work is rooted in the legacy of Southern freedom movements. As a new and out survivor during those early days, this work was both empowering and it was challenging. Now, the challenging part was relational dynamics that I experienced from certain folks that left me feeling ashamed, dismissed, judged. For my spiritual resilience, at times I thought I could not bring my spiritual self into the organizing spaces. I was devastated and I felt fragmented and confused. I thought that perhaps movement space and organizing was not for me. And yet, community organizing work was, and it still is, an extension of my relationship to the divine. This was undeniable for me, and it still is. For Islam teaches me to work against all forms of oppression and oppressors in cooperation with each other, in cooperation with community. So when I got the message that the relationship that I had with the divine source had to be checked at the door, I was heartbroken. I felt betrayed by the movement. And I complained to my comrade, Kara Page, about my fragmented experience. Kara heard me. She understood how our spirituality and collective, our spirituality is a source of resilience and vital to our work as folks surviving various forms of generational and collective trauma, burnout, state violence, systemic oppression. Kara had many conversations with me and with other elders and young organizers about movement history and trauma, and eventually brought folks together to explore the role of healing and healers in our movements. And the term healing justice was coined by Kara Page. Healing justice is a political strategy conceived in 2005 and formally launched in 2006 by Kindred Southern Healing Justice Collective to intervene and respond to generational trauma and systemic oppression and build community-led and survivor-led responses rooted in Southern traditions of resiliency to sustain our emotional, our physical, our spiritual, our psychic, and environmental well-being. It was in these early years of my organizing career that I was interested in exploring how to be in right relationship with one another, how to build with a common set of containers so that we could collectively hold trauma as we organize and build political strategies with each other that are liberatory and transformative for our movements. Now, fast forward to recent times, relational challenges still exist. I still experience tactics that are resident of colonization, really, tactics of exclusion, lack of transparency, emotional boundary violations, physical boundary violations, triangulations, backroom conversations, and other dynamics that reinforce power imbalance, which only perpetuate the forces of oppression in our organizing spaces, in our organizations, in our groups, communities. This was unacceptable to me. It is unacceptable to me. What are we not getting? What are we still missing in our movements? These are the questions that weigh in my heart late at night. I really want to see our movement spaces be able to embody that which we are demanding from the world. So with that, let's get ready. Are you ready? Let's dive in to the relational justice portal. Relational justice is a relational framework that is rooted in anti-oppression work, and it is about doing, building, and being in relationships with each other in such a way that we embody communication skills that offer a sacred and transformative relational container for emotional and neurological healing to happen. in real time. Relational justice is about recognizing the impact of colonization, generational trauma can have and will bring up the relational complex, especially where power imbalances still exist and where identities of marginalization and privilege collide. So relational justice is about recognizing how the colonization, the impact, will bring up this conflicts. Now, I told you that it has multiple dimensions, right? So the first dimension of relational justice framework within our relationships mean that we first get very clear about our identities of marginalization and privilege at any given time and any given context. This is self-awareness work. It's consciousness development work, and it takes time. It doesn't come very easy, but it does take a lot of self-reflection. Getting conscious about and deeply tracking and understanding yours and other person's privileges and marginalized identities in order to center the need of the marginalized identities in that relationship in real time is the first step. I know that's a lot. It's a lot to track there. So let me give you some examples. And these are just some examples. I'll just start off with my own, right? So I'm a brown, cisgender, which is a privilege, woman, under patriarchy, not a privilege, able-bodied, privilege, right? And college educated, privilege, documented, privilege, right? So I may be brown and I may be a woman, but in all these other ways, I have a lot of privilege. So being able to track that, right? I'm also neurotypical. So keeping in mind that feels really important. And then of course, there's class. I have a job, right? Or I create jobs for myself. I have a financial security of sort, right? So keeping that in mind feels really important. Because there may be times when I speak with somebody who's not in those privileged places, right? Or who's not able-bodied, who's not cisgender, who's not documented, right? I have several friends who are undocumented. Like, what does it mean to provide security and protection in their times of need, right? Or friends who are not able-bodied or disabled, what does it mean to show up for them, right? And am I using my able-bodiedness to support those who are in need, right? So keeping track of all of that and really leveling up, right? Leveling up in tracking and also then actually acting from that place of awareness of what it means to be accountable to the privileges, right? Just give you some other random examples. Are you for example, a white, cis, able-bodied woman speaking with a Black, trans, able-bodied woman? What does it mean to show up at the intersection of the gender there? Are you a brown, cis, male, middle-class, straight, able-bodied person relating to an indigenous, cis, straight, male, elder person with disabilities, right? So these are the things we want to begin to track. For example, how to build awareness of these and many other identities and what they mean in the context of white supremacy, heteropatriarchy, capitalism, imperialism, colonization, are critical to the remaining 3 dimensions of relational justice framework. The second dimension focuses on The second dimension focuses on the relational impact of colonization. So unfortunately, one of the manifestations of colonialism is the ideology of individualism, which then breeds isolationism, which disconnects us from each other, therefore making us distant from each other, which then makes it easier to judge each other, discriminate against each other, and even turn against each other, attack, belittle, alienate, dominate, colonize, violate each other in all kinds of ways. These are the impacts of colonization, and it hurts us all at our deepest levels and in our most vulnerable moments relationally. Isolationism and individualism is also often perpetuated by institutions, systems, and policies. And these cause harm to our collective culture, our collective future, and threaten our collective liberation. We have to decolonize our lives and our relationships so that we can be in equitable relationship with ourselves, with each other, and our planet. We cannot heal each other if power imbalances exist and get in the way of the sacred space that is between you and me, between you and others, right? If we don't let our privileges, if we don't let go of our privileges and interrogate how the forces of oppression play out in our everyday conversations and relationships, we're feeding into the existing injustices of the world and the systems of oppression. So to create accountable and just relationships, there must be a commitment to decenter whiteness, decenter heteropatriarchy, and other systemic forces in relationship to marginalized identities when relating to someone in real time. To practice relational justice means we welcome and accept and center ideas, thoughts, history, perspectives, and experiences that do not place ideologies that are rooted in systemic oppression at the forefront of our conversations and decisions. If we hold a systemic privilege, the onus of responsibility is on us to create a safe container for the marginalized identity to shine through, be centered, be heard, and be affirmed. This is a fundamental relational justice practice. Now, this self-awareness and this is self-awareness, right? And this is self-awareness about identities and its work and its deep work. And conflict and mistakes along the way is part of this dynamic journey. So this brings me to the third dimension of this framework. The third dimension is accepting mistakes and conflicts as growth waiting to happen, and possibly as healing opportunities as well for us, especially relationally. In integrating this dimension into our relationships means we choose to accept and navigate relational conflict as growth and healing opportunities for our hearts, our minds, and our souls, as folks who choose to connect at the intersection of differences and build beyond our differences towards the intention for collective healing and liberation. Now, as a side note, I want to make sure, I want to say that when I say conflict, I do not mean experiences of danger, violence, or abuse. In such cases, safety and protection strategies need to be prioritized before relational justice practices are introduced, incorporated. So let me go in here. What would it mean? Wait, okay, yeah. So what would it mean if we could talk without criticism, listen without judgment, and connect and build at the intersection of differences? Right? So relational justice honors that a lot of our relational conflict is rooted in the limitations of our communication skills and or our nervous system feeling triggered. And therefore, relational justice extends an invitation to grow and learn from and with each other about each other's triggers and stories, the stories behind the triggers, behind the reactivities, the impulses, because they reveal a lot. And the impulses that are revealing what is going on, right? And the conflict is actually revealing that. And so we need to go behind the conflict and actually ask the question about what's the story, right? What's the story behind this? The question is, can we slow down enough to get interested enough to get curious about the stories? Because after all, how you speak, how you listen has the power to heal or harm. Now, neuroscience tells us that reactivity, judgment, assumptions, projections, and biases are often automatic, very fast, impulsive, and usually unconscious. Whereas curiosity is slow. It requires conscious thinking. It happens in our conscious thinking part of our brain. So relational justice invites us to get curious before formulating assumptions and conclusions and judgments, making up presumptuous stories in our own heads about what the other person and their intentions might be. Right? Relational justice just asks us to get curious. Ask the questions, ask the deeper questions, pause, slow down. Ultimately, relational justice calls us to come to each other as relational healers, being ready to set aside our judgments and show up by what I call living in the inquiry. Living in the inquiry has a set of questions that I usually say we need to be asking ourselves all the time, kind of like in a part of like a cellular memory, if you will. The questions are, am I in the space to offer my presence in this moment? If so, how may I show up for you at this moment? If not, what might I need from this moment or from you instead? Can I take care of myself? Or maybe invite you to show up for me at this moment instead? Relational justice recognizes that we are all interconnected and interdependent creatures, and that we rely on each other. As an Aboriginal elder, Lila Watson, reminds us when she says, if you have come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. As an ancestor, civil rights liberator, freedom fighter, Fannie Lou Hamer also reminds us when she says, nobody is free until everybody is free. So indeed, our healing and liberation process is bound up together, and that there is actually a responsibility that comes with this interconnected, interdependent nature of our being. A part of that responsibility is that we recognize and are accountable for being relational with each other. Which brings me to relational accountability, the fourth dimension. How do we practice accountability in a relational context? Now, I agree with my comrade, Mia Mingus, my teacher, a friend, when she says, what if accountability wasn't scary? It will never be easy or comfortable. But what if it wasn't scary? What if our accountability wasn't something we ran from, but something we ran towards, desired, appreciated, held as sacred? Accountability is not a destination. It is a skill we build to practice. Accountability is as precious opportunities to practice liberation. So accountability indeed is a skill. Most importantly, it is a relational and communication skill. Unfortunately, many of us try to hold each other accountable or launch accountability processes, and yet they are missing key pieces to this work, to do this work safely, bravely, and relationally. I have seen how accountability attempts end incomplete and/or further harm all parties involved. Relational justice skills facilitate how to communicate with one another in a way that is trauma-informed so that we can hold ourselves and each other accountable in ways that do not reproduce or perpetuate colonizing tactics. Relational justice offers a set of communication skills, practices, and tools that when you use these tools, it not only guides the way you talk and listen, it actually has a way of regulating your nervous system and therefore help you regulate your emotions and reactivities better, and helps you formulate your responses to be respectful, curious, accountable in a way where both you and the other person, your friend, your colleague, boundaries are actually respected. Your needs are respected, and your dignity is upheld in real time. Relational justice skills uplift the practices of creating healing connections, building trust and psychological safety, and honors the practice of clear boundaries. Speaking of which, relational justice is about being dialogical with each other. Augusta Ball, who is a Brazilian theater practitioner, political activist, says that all human relationships should be of dialogic nature among men and women, races, families, groups, and nations. Dialogue should prevail. In reality, all dialogues have the tendency to become monologue, which creates a relationship oppressor and oppressed. And that quote is from Declaration of Principles on Theater of the Oppressed. So relational justice calls us to create safe containers for trusting connections to flourish so that we may heal at the intersection of differences with very clear boundaries between the person receiving, listening, and the person sending, the speaker, because how you listen, how you speak has the power to heal or harm in real time. This brings us to the communication practice part that is the key to creating safe relational container. So I wish I could say that I created this structure, but I didn't. It's actually developed by psychologists, Harville Hendricks and Helen LaKelly Hunt. And they were the creators of Imago Intentional Dialogue. So as you can see here in the slide, the fundamental receiver skills, which is the listener skills, is mirroring what the other person is saying, just mirror, that's all. Repeat back, basically. Active listening, some of us call it. Engaging curiosity, asking the question, is there more? Did I get you? And then validating the person, their reality, their perspective as it is, because everybody has different perspective. And so we just validate. We don't have to agree, we just validate. Empathize, right? Really saying, getting into the other person's body and feeling out what they may be feeling out, empathizing. And then recapping, doing a little summary of what you feel you've just heard. And then asking the question again, did I get you? To make sure that what was being sent and what was being heard is calibrated. And so it actually lowers misunderstanding, right? Confusion. So what are the fundamental skills of the sender, the speaker? The fundamental responsibility is making sure that whatever it is that I am sending as a speaker, that how it lands, the impact of what I am sending, what I am speaking, matches the intention that I had when I wanted to send that, right? So impact matches intention is very important. So our message gets across exactly the way we meant it. And we take responsibility. I take responsibility for the impact of how the message lands on you. Right? That's my responsibility. I gotta take ownership and accountability for that. These are some basic responsibilities that I'm sharing with you. There's a lot more to both the listener and the sender, but these are some basic fundamental ones that I'm sharing. So also getting consent, making sure that you are available before I begin speaking with you and that you're in the place to have this kind of conversation that I want to have with you, right? So consent. Being succinct, so avoiding run-on sentences and going on and on, because we all have certain attention span these days. So we want to be successful with our listener, right? We don't want to have them check out. So being succinct and practicing with being succinct is important. And avoid finger pointing, avoid you talk. Oftentimes that kicks up people's defenses and then we just lose the conversation, especially if it's a challenging, emotionally triggering kind of a conversation, right? So these are some basic steps to keep in mind. Now, we are all in various places along the spectrum of embodying this relational work. I invite you to notice where your opportunities for growth are today. I know that as you engage in relational justice work, you will naturally become more skilled in your practice because whatever we practice, we get better at. Now, we may not be able to dismantle white supremacy today, However, we can give each other a taste of justice at a relational level through the conversations we have every day. And just imagine conversations after conversations spreading far and wide in all your different relationships, through your relationships, right? Till it becomes a community-wide practice, a societal practice, a cultural practice that is primed for collective liberation. Thank you.
Wow. Sonali, thank you so much for affirming a lot of thoughts that are in, I'm sure, a lot of our minds and hearts and heads, and you know, in the relational justice aspect, you know, as sexual assault advocates, how important that is, not only to the work when we're working with survivors, but also as leaders, for those of us who lead teams, for those of us who are leaders in organizations, that relational aspect with staff. You know, we can't say we're doing this great work if we're not treating staff in this way as well. It's just, you helped put all that together in my mind. That's what I'm taking from it. And I know everyone has their, but thank you. This has been so refreshing for me. My heart is full and bursting. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions, comments? I see a lot of comments in the chat. I don't know if you can see those, Sonali, but everyone is just very thankful for you. And the information. Someone said they're giving you standing ovations.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I would love to, yeah, if you all have any questions. I touched on some of these concepts kind of just like on a light level, but there's so much more to unpack underneath a lot of this, and there's so much more, you know. But yeah, totally open to your questions. And so, so grateful to each one of you for hanging in here with this talk.
We didn't lose anyone. Everyone stood from the beginning to end. I think that says a lot about you, a lot about the concepts and the topics that you brought to us today.
Is this mine?
Okay, let's see. You want to listen again and again. So yeah, y'all feel free to, I know that's, you know, sometimes people are processors and they want to, you know, it'll come to them. So yeah, we'll hang here for a little, or Sonali, as long, if you have to go, we absolutely understand that.
I'm here until 6.
So. Okay. Oh, nice.
I see here one. Oh yeah, Rose, you said connect and build at the intersection of our differences. Yes.
Hit me. I loved it.
That's where the healing potential is. That's also where our, for me at least, the opportunities for growth, because oftentimes it's natural to avoid the differences, to stay away, because it just brings up a lot of our own ignorance, right? It brings up a lot of, at least for me, it does. Like, oh, I don't know about this person's reality or this person's whatever experience. And so, you know, it takes a little bit more of an effort for me to engage with them in that which I don't know. It really requires humility.
Yeah.
And it requires courage to still reach out and just ask, just be curious. And so I actually just like to say is just focus on being curious, because then you're not focusing on all the limitations, right? And so to me, it's just like, it's like a brain game. I got to trick myself, right? Like, it's just a brain thing. Like, okay, I mean, there's so much. The thing is that the world is infinite. One person's life, I can infinitely learn about. You know, there's so much to learn about each other's stories, each other's experiences and past and histories and visions and dreams and desires, infinite amounts, you know. And if we can just slow down enough to get curious, and that's it, that's all we have to do. right?
Absolutely. I have a couple of questions here if you're still open for those. The first one, let's see. I'll go back up here. It says, other than practicing our skills, where would you recommend we look to further our learning and growth around relational justice?
Okay, okay, so, so you know, relational justice is, for me, has been something that, the framework is something that I've put together from years and years of life experience, organizing experience, and also just books and all kinds of resources that I've been exposed to over the years. And so I would actually say, okay, so I've, well, in my website, first of all, is a little bit, you know, reach out to me. However, what I talked about, I hope you all got this. Nothing I talked about is brand new. I just kind of pulled together certain things and I framed it a certain way, right? And so these, what I'm talking about, exist out there, especially if you're wanting, so like Me and White Supremacy, right? The book. And that has a lot of great information around how to understand the experience of Black, Indigenous, and people of color experiences, right? And so, and like understanding white supremacy and how that shows up on a systemic level, and then also at the macro level, and then at the micro level. So like resources like that, right? Disability Visibility, that's another book, right? Again, that I've learned from, right? And of course, I'm friends with Mia Mingus, and I'm always like following her on social media and stuff. And so there's a lot. If y'all don't know Mia Mingus, definitely follow her on social media. So amazing resources exist, but in this particular framework with the actual relational justice practices, the communication model, right? It's the imago intentional dialogue, and there are tons of YouTube. There are role plays and actual real life folks having the intentional dialogue with each other. I do want to say that originally when Dr. Helen LaKelly Hunt and Harville Hendricks, when they created this, it was actually made for couples. But what I'm doing is I'm taking it outside the therapy room, and we're applying it because the neuroscience and the skills applies across for everybody. It's supportive and healing to everybody, you know, not just for couples. And so, so keeping that in mind, so these resources exist, but I'm here as a resource if you ever want to get in touch.
Wonderful. We have another question. Thank you so much. And this question is from Amanda Lewis. She says, where do you see the transformative justice movement going with sexual violence accountability? Are you seeing more opportunities for this work?
So I cannot speak for the whole movement itself. There's so many, there is so much more capacity and interest and structure and funding that transformative justice movement builders and organizers are getting and doing on the ground these days. I mean, from what I'm observing, that it's becoming absolutely more needed, more recognized, more valued, appreciated, and just more available, I would say, because there are so many more transformative justice organizers these days, and the TJ tools and TJ kind of strategies are being incorporated into a lot of different kind of organizing that happens in movement spaces. And so that's what I have seen. Now, I can't speak for the whole movement. So.
Thank you. And here is another question. It's from Maya. She said, do you have any suggestions on ways to restructure work environments like meetings to foster more relational healing?
Okay, so I want to make sure I'm hearing this question. Am I hearing Oh, did you? Okay, hold on.
We still hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, let me, I can fix this, hold on.
Take your time. Take your time.
Okay, okay, great. So I want to make sure I heard this question, I understood this question. The question is, can we bring relational practices more into meeting spaces? Is that the question?
But it sounds like, yeah, to restructure work environments like meetings to foster more relational healing. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So when I've worked with groups in the past, is that on an organizational, on a structural, institutional level, I kind of study, first of all, what their current culture is. You know, how are they holding their meetings? How often are they actually meeting? Are there meetings, or like I call them like circle sessions, where they just come together to just build with one another, to learn about each other, you know, rather than just talk business, right? So having those kind of sessions built in to the organizational culture, if it's not a weekly thing, that it's a bi-weekly thing or a monthly thing, right? But it's basically relationship building spaces are intentionally created. Because when we're not intentionally creating those spaces, guess what? The work is going to take over, and all our business matters is going to overcrowd. And then we have crises we got to deal with. And then we have all these, you know, our own life, you know, crisis is going on, and then community crisis is going on. I mean, that will always be there. Those dynamics and crisis dynamics and overworking kind of schedule will always be there. So we really have to be intentional about putting in the relational hour, right? And prioritizing it, valuing it enough to prioritize it, to see it just as valuable, that if not more valuable, because when we connect with one another and we're building relationships with one another in a deeper way, guess what? It brings a sense of resiliency. It brings us a greater sense of like passion, you know, into the work. And guess what? We feel closer with each other, and we feel like, so if we're building, you know, if we're building that way, right? If we're building in that direction, then eventually what's going to happen is we're going to feel like my colleagues got my back, right? And I'm not alone, and I'm not in isolation. And if I am carrying a lot that's going on in my work, I can come and bring this in an intentional container. If there's too much going on for me, then I can bring this in my relational circle gathering, and we can hold space for each other, and we can create those strategies with each other. And so building in intentional spaces to have those kind of conversations with one another on a regular basis feels really important. Valuing it, making sure it is part of the organizational culture, right? And that's one thing. But always, and also how we hold our meetings. Like, say you are having a business meeting, and it's like, you know, strategizing, organizing, you get a plan and respond to crisis and whatnot. Take a moment to just maybe even sit. Of course, you don't have 30 minutes, right? Say you only have like less than 5 minutes out of the entire 1 hour, hour and a half meeting that you're about to have. But take that 2 minutes just to sit in silence and maybe go around and just look at each other. What I call that tracking, right? It's about tracking each other's nervous system. And you may not have time to talk about what's going on and unpack and like build and like, you know, however, you have an intentional practice to just check each other out in a collective way where there's consent, making sure that there is consent first to do that, because it can be powerful work, even if it's for 1 minute. Let that be information. Let that be some, you know, the information that you're taking in about each other, and then go into the work, right? Bring in some mindfulness practices, or bring in some somatic practices, bring in some just like aromatherapy, you know, things that really help to support your nervous system at the end of the day. That's kind of what I'm saying, like, especially in those busy meetings, right? That you're still incorporating some of these tools and practices to begin your meeting with. And then you have something that you end the meeting with together. So it's not just like turning off the Zoom and then, you know, there, but like you do a go around and and I'm not saying that you all don't do this already. Some of you may already have been doing this, you know. This is part of what we very much have been talking about in the healing justice work over the years, is that we have built-in practices that really are about honoring our nervous system.
Mm.
You know?
Man, that spoke to me too. I'll admit I've got to get better at that. Sorry, TOS folks. We're going to do that. I know we're like, oh, let's get this, and we do a little bit of that, but the intentional prioritizing, valuing that is so helpful. So I feel like you were just talking straight to me, but I know everybody feels that way. You're so great. The information you have shared with us is so great. Denise, I don't know if you wanted to add anything in, or Cecilia. I wish I could open up, webinars different for me. I don't know how to open the mics up for everybody, but.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, your experience, your passion. Thank you for sharing all of it. I think it touched all of us very deeply, and there's a lot of thank yous in here, a lot of, I learned a lot of, I need to hear this again and again, and I need to hear this again because I need to unpack a lot of stuff. There was a lot of great ones. Tim Love wrote, "How you speak or how you listen has the power to heal or harm in any given moment." Mm. That is going up on my wall as a reminder and a call to be present, to slow down, to be connected, and be intentional. Mm. Thank you for that gift. Mm. So I thought that was important for you to know as well. Thank you, because the way that you showed up helped us in a lot of different ways heal, probably, or at least feel recognized and seen for some of the ways we want to do things, or some of the ways we're trying to keep doing things. Mm-hmm. So for that gift, thank you so very much. Mm-hmm. And I'm also sharing in the chat box the link for the evaluations for this session. So if you would please fill those out, you can fill it out in English or in Spanish. The link is there. I think maybe for folks who may have tried to fill it out a little bit earlier, where we wait, you can't fill it out until the session is actually over so we can get some feedback. Please do share your feedback. We'll share this with Sonali. We'll share this with you as well. Yes. But it's great to hear the feedback, and that really helps us shape what we're doing next.
Absolutely. I'm a sucker for feedback, y'all. I actually love it all. Hold me accountable. Hold me accountable, kindly hold me accountable. Speak from my perspective, right? I like this. I didn't like this. I want this. I disagree with this. No, definitely, I totally invite. Thank you. Denise, that was beautiful. And yes, I absolutely invite your constructive feedback. Let me know what could have been better. Let me know what you didn't appreciate hearing, and let's begin a conversation about it. Let's meet at the intersection of differences.
Yes. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Thank you to everyone for sharing this time and this space with us, for staying open to learning, to hearing, to unlearning. And may we all start those first steps or continue as we decolonize our practices.
Thank you. So thank you, everyone. Much love. Thank you, Cecilia. Thank you, Rose, Denise, Laura, Eddie. Thank you all. Much love.
All right. Thank you so much. And it is 4:59, and we'll give you a minute back of your time, Sonali, but thanks again. And we will be in touch with you for sure. again for more of this conversation. We need it.
Maybe we could go out to some music.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Denise.
Maybe we could dance it out.
Yes. Okay, let's see what this is. I don't know if this, I don't recognize this song, but we're going to try it.
Just in case you missed it, Amanda said we need a workshop to break down colonialism and decolonizing.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying next year.
Okay. Well, I'm not an expert on that topic per se. I incorporate principles of that into it. However, what I can offer is the relational justice framework and the communication practices.
Yeah.
I got you on that. You know. But you all will teach me about colonization too, and that's something I hope to be a co-learning experience.
Yes.
Because we all have experiences of that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Much love. I would love to get a recording if that's possible.
Oh yeah, definitely. This is being recorded, and we'll share that link with you for sure.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
6 cylinders underneath the hood, crashing and kicking. Listen to the engine whine. I am gonna make it.
Are folks jumping off? Okay, we're gonna try some things, Rose. So if you could stay on.
Okay.
Okay.
I played video games in a drunken haze. I was 17 years young. Hurt my knuckles punching the machines. The taste of Scotch rich on my tongue. Hung out, trading swigs from the bottle, all bitter and clean, locking eyes, holding hands, twin high maintenance machines. I am gonna make it through this year. If it kills me, I am gonna make it through this year. If it kills me, I drove home in the California dusk. I can feel the alcohol inside of me hum. Picture the look on my stepfather's face. Ready for the bad things to come.
I think we're trying to figure out how to pin the speaker.
Okay.
I don't know on your end if you have spotlight.
How to do what? I'm sorry.
If there's a way to spotlight a speaker or a panelist.
Let me see. Let me see under this more. Nope, live on Facebook. Yeah, I can't see it immediately if it's here.
If you could go to my box, and if you hover over there, those 3 little dots, like it has, you can mute me.
Oh, spotlight video. Let me try that.
Yeah, try that.
Ooh, nice. You're up front.
So I think that's what we need to do for the speakers.
Okay. That's a good idea.
Those. Yeah, Virginia and I are texting each other at the same time. And yeah. Okay, so I can't do it. So when I pin you, it's just pinning on my screen. But as the host, you can spotlight whoever the speaker is.
Okay, good. So tomorrow's keynote, we'll be spotlighting little Kurt, and then.
But what I don't know is if when you do the spotlight, you can also see slides. Does Curtis have slides tomorrow or no?
That I do not know. Can you try sharing something to see?
Yes, that was my next move.
Oh, hey, I like this song. Oh, yeah. All right, Denise. Yeah, because I just see you, and now I see your screen, the bios. But you're the only one I see here on the side. And then, so yeah, you can share your screen and highlight somebody.
Okay, so yeah, that's what it looks like. You can still see me and the PowerPoint. So yeah, maybe we can try doing that to do the spotlight on the person who's speaking, and then they can still share their, if they're the one sharing the slides, you can still see it.
I'm taking a picture of it and I'll text you what it looked like. But it's perfect. Did you just do the same little share your screen situation?
Yeah, I did. Virginia's still typing something to me. Hold on. Okay, thank you. I want to make sure I'm paying attention. I'm paying attention before I get in trouble. Yeah, all right, that works. So we can try that for tomorrow and see if that makes it a little bit easier.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so tomorrow's a little, like I said, a little Kurt, so we'll do that with him. And okay, yeah, this was great. I think we are, anything else that y'all need?
Not that I can think of. Now we just got to jump into our regular.
Oh, Brenda is asking for a survey, an evaluation.
Yeah.
I just put it there. I think
Brenda, we'll get that right over to you. I'll cut and paste. Let me see if I can.
There it is.
Right. Oh, did you? Okay. You get it, Brenda? Hopefully you got it. It's right there. Yeah, if you can click on that. I think, Denise, did you say, oh, you're welcome. Denise, did you say that we have to get out before we can fill it out, or how does that work? Can we start filling out?
Yeah, you can start filling it out now. It's just that you can't fill out one for 3:30 if it's 4 o'clock. Like you need to wait till that session's over. And then Brenda, you can just click on that same link and then you can go back and do the other ones because there'll be a menu of choosing which time slot. So you can just use the same link for all of them. Even if you missed it right after the workshop, you can still go back and do that, Brenda. I hope that works for you.
Okay.
Can you end interpretation?
Yeah, let me manage and okay. Did I do that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Susana. Thank you, Azucena. Thank you for doing such great work as always.
Okay, see you tomorrow. Take good care of yourselves.
You too. Que descansen.
Gracias. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
I think we're good now, Miss Rose.
Okay.
Thank
Cool.
you.
No problem. Thank you. This is good. Every time this happens, it gets easier. So
Thankfully.
okay, see you on a bit.
Okay.